Welcome back for the 8th installment of our Extra Lore series, recorded live on November 1st, 2016 on twitch.tv. Big shout out to the chat here. Thank you so much for spending your evening with us. Our topic for this chat is an exploration of the Bioshock series. This is your host, Blue Crew 86. Alongside me, we have the man who it has been said has the voice of a flower, Justin Sane 0516. Justin, what are your thoughts on the topic tonight?
I'm shocked. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, really cool game. Never got the chance to actually play it. It's actually been thinking about picking up the collection. So maybe this will be the tipping point I've been looking for.
I think we might prove a reason to get it. We also have with us a lady who makes even something as crazy as fabric theory sound amazingly awesome, Mel. Mel, I assume you have a few thoughts on the styles that are seen in this series?
Yeah. Do we want to talk about this now? I feel like this is getting get heavy.
Yeah.
Like, if I start talking about fabric now, like, you can't start me off on fabric.
No. We have an entire section. I have an entire section in the notes pinned off. This is highlighted Mel's fabric theory.
I see it. I see it. But actually, I love Bioshock. I'm a huge fan of the first game. The second game wasn't my all-time favorite, but the third one, Infinite, I did like. So I'm really excited to be diving into this. I haven't in a while, but I remember I did dive a little bit into this lore, so I'm excited to kind of go over this, and hopefully we won't spoil too much for Justin.
Yeah.
I won't remember it.
Yeah,
it'll be okay.
I wasn't going to say that. I wasn't going to say that, but since Justin did mention, I don't think he'll remember it. So, We're also joined by our favorite mythographer in training, Demigod 257. Sorry, I always mess up numbers. Demigod, you ready to dive into this multiverse with us?
Yeah, sure. It's gonna hurt, but yeah, I'm all down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a while since you've jumped on. Can you remind everybody where can we find you, and actually what got you into Bioshock? Because I know you kind of are our resident expert.
Okay. So, well, first off, you guys can find me on Twitter at Dr. Lore Josh. You can also check out my YouTube channel. Not anything special at all, but that's youtube.com/Dr. Stunjosh. See the similarities there. Bioshock, I don't really know what got me into it. I had a friend of mine back when Bioshock Infinite came out, who said, "Hey, I know that you enjoy these nice, heavy story-based games. If you haven't played it yet, try out the Bioshock series. Bioshock Infinite's coming out, and with the disc actually came the original Bioshock." So that was back in 2013 or something like that. It was the same year that The Last of Us and Tomb Raider came out, and I kind of played all three of those games at the same time. Absolutely loved Bioshock Infinite. Immediately went to download the first game and start playing it. Fell in love with that one, played Bioshock 2, and after that I was always kind of hoping that they'd go back and make a Bioshock 3. But alas, Irrational Games, the company kind of disbanded, so I've been in Stillwater up until the collection came out. So
okay, well, I mean, yeah, because I know Irrational kind of gave 2K back the full ownership, right? If I remember that correctly.
Yeah, they I guess this might be a reason why most people, Mel included, might not have liked the second game, but the second game actually wasn't developed by Irrational Games. It was 2K and whoever they had made the game. So it's one of those things, not unlike Arkham Origins, I believe, for the Batman series, where they didn't have the original development team for that game, and people felt that it kind of flopped in terms of story and content.
Because that was, I think, 2K Boston was Irrational, and then 2K Marin was the one with Bioshock 2 I have on the notes.
Yeah, I think that was it.
So, okay. Well, that's cool. Like I said, we're going to try to get Justin a reason to get back into it, or to get into the game series. So we'll see what we can do. Well, before we start the chat, however, I do have a few housekeeping notes. In our last Extra Lore episode, we discussed the world of Assassin's Creed. If you missed that and have any interest in hearing our thoughts, please be sure to check out www.focusfirechat.com for archives of all previous chats, as well as links to all our various other pages. If you don't mind, please give us some feedback on iTunes to let us know how we're doing as well. As many of you already know, Focus Fire Chat is a cross-community gathering where the intent is to offer a week-long, in-depth view of a particular subject from within the lore of Destiny and other games. With the Extra Lore series, we delve into a game series other than Destiny for a full month, giving the group a chance to get a feel for the other games that our community loves to play. We do try to stream a recap of this month-long conversation in the first week of each month, or according to Justin, the first Tuesday of each month, apparently. Please be sure to also give us some support to the other podcasts in the Guardian Radio Network, found at theguardiansofdestiny.com. These include Guardian Radio, the official podcast for the Guardians of Destiny, Guardian 1, and Ghosts and Echoes, which also has the Destiny audio grimoire. Our next Extra Lore is going to be a discussion on the Borderland games, so be sure to jump into Discord server and weigh in on those. With that, Demigod, would you kindly start us off with a general summary on the information that we have about the world of Bioshock?
All right, so Bioshock is a multi-universe game. The setting seems to focus around a certain location that is usually known as the Lighthouse, and the mantra of the game is one man, one city, one lighthouse. There's always a man, there's always a city, there's always a lighthouse, and they seem to take place in, and I always feel like I'm misusing this term when I say it, but it seems to take place in a sort of steampunkish alternate reality of the early 20th century. So you have amazing developments in science that even today we still don't have. Ideologies have shifted, or because of the time period that they're in, they're even more prominent than they might have been. Mm-hmm. But as you play the series, you start to believe that as the player and as the person who is conducting all these actions, you tend to believe that there's a matter of choice. Mm-hmm. And what it really comes down to, in my belief, is there are some choices that will always lead to X result, and there are choices that will always lead to Y result. So you don't really have a choice in what you do because the outcome is already set from the moment you pick it. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's similar to a theory called the illusion of choice. Like you think you have a choice, and you are. I mean, I would describe it as the way that most people deal with a toddler, because I have a 3-year-old, and I totally understand this because I give him a choice. Do you want to brush your teeth or read a book? You know, so you have a choice, but you don't have a choice. Like, you have a choice on which you're going to do, but you don't have a choice as far as the ultimate outcome.
Yeah, and especially when it comes to the first game, the whole a lot of the first game deals with the idea of freedom, and you're right. It is very much an illusion to some degree. For the character of Jack, it is because none of his choices were his own. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's really a heavy game in terms of story, in terms of what it makes you think about what is right and what is wrong, what freedom and liberty is, and just a fantastic series overall. Yeah.
No.
Just trying to think about it right now is like over.
Yeah, it can like always it really is. And I think the other thing is like when we back up and we look at it, it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna go, like the first game, First game takes place in Rapture, which is the underwater city. A good thing to note is these games, if you play them 1, 2, and then Infinite, you're going to notice, especially with Infinite, that the timeline doesn't follow. This is not a chronological story. It doesn't follow chronologically. The reason why I say that is the first game, Bioshock, is set in 1960. Bioshock 2 is set in 1968. And then Bioshock Infinite is actually set in 1912. And then there's a DLC for Bioshock Infinite that's very, very important that we will talk about. That's the Burial at Sea DLC. And that actually takes place in 1958. And that DLC is actually where a lot of, I think, and Demigod, correct me here, but I think that's going to be the basis of a lot of our conversation, because that kind of confirms the multiverse, parallel universe theory that a lot of people already had. It basically officially confirms it, and kind of it's Irrational Games really kind of their epilogue for the series, and they're closing the book and being like, okay, we're done. It's, this is the last piece for us, and this ties everything up, and we're moving on. But to take a step back to kind of give an introduction, to the first game, Bioshock takes place in a underwater city called Rapture. Basically, and I agree completely. I've always kind of viewed it as a steampunk-esque type of game. It's very, very heavily. The cover of Bioshock with the Big Daddy, which is the giant submarine guy with the giant drill hand. Those guys are terrifying, by the way. But like, it is a very. I guess that's all to say. I really do agree with the steampunk. It does borrow some from like a survival horror genre, because there's a lot of options as far as how you play through the game. Bioshock was one of the earlier games, at least that I remember, that really, really relied on the idea of moral choices, especially within the game. They introduce characters such as the little sisters, and it was a very big deal, because you basically get to choose whether or not to kill or to save these sisters. And the reason why you do this is there's a genetic material called Adam, which basically is used to superpower or to grant superhuman abilities. And there's and so the way one of the ways you can obtain Adam is by killing the sisters. And so every time you encounter a little sister who's usually protected by a Big Daddy, they're kind of part and parcel, which is important to remember, because that's another parallel. Demigod was talking about the parallels. That is another big parallel that we're going to talk about. But one of the things in the Bioshock game that was introduced really was every time you run into the little sister, you get given a choice. Do you kill the little sister and harvest the Adam, or do you let her go and let her survive and save her, basically? And you don't really let her. You save, like, I guess you purge, if I remember right. Isn't there like a? Don't you like?
So what it is you're actually you're safely extracting the Adam. Okay. But from the little sister's body,
but you don't get as much. Right? Okay, yeah. So it's a matter. It's a matter of harvest them.
Yes.
Okay.
But if you do that enough, don't they leave you a little teddy bear?
Yeah, and that's the other thing, and that's what I mean is, like, so there's consequences for your choices in Bioshock, and actually throughout the series, this was a very big theme. They based a lot of the concept around like the Ayn Rand objectivisms, and then there's definitely Orwellism, especially in Infinity. Oh my God, there was so much, but that was what I was going to get to, is the consequences. Especially with Bioshock. I've only played Bioshock through fully. I tried Bioshock 2, and it actually kind of soured my taste for the series, and I picked up Infinite, but by the time I picked up Infinite, I already had an Xbox One, and so it wasn't backwards compatible, and so I didn't really give it a. It was just like I don't really want to go play it, because of my problem with Bioshock 2. So I definitely wish I had played Bioshock Infinite, especially doing research for this with the DLC. We were kind of talking about that before show with Demigod. I was like, yeah, I'm kicking myself for not playing this, but Bioshock, the ending was actually determined based on your interaction with the sisters. There are 3 endings. Technically there are 2, but technically there's 3, but there really are 2. So what happens is if you save all the sisters, the game ends one way. I don't. Do we want to talk about the ending? Is the ending?
I don't think the ending really matters.
Okay. So let me just say this.
Easter egg.
The ending it happens one way if you save all the sisters. If you kill all the if you kill all the sisters, it happens another way. And then if you only kill some of the sisters, like if you have like a mix, it ends the same way as if you kill with a nuanced difference. Like there is a quote difference, but it technically ends the same.
Yeah, that the middle road in terms of the end game is actually a little bit clearer if you play Bioshock 2. Just because of how it ends, you save all the little sisters, you have one ending, you kill them, you have another ending. But the middle road, the dialogue that takes place between, and this is not to jump so far ahead, but dialogue that takes place between Eleanor and Delta is...
Oh, okay.
It's a little bit easier to understand what it meant to have that balance of killing and saving, or that's not a good way to say it, but there is a better way to understand what the middle road is. Whereas in Bioshock 1, it doesn't really make sense. You feel like you're still doing something
wrong,
wholly immoral. Just to completely amend what I said at the beginning of this, the Bioshock series is really a game concerning itself with humanity, morality, and the false hope of utopia.
Yes,
is not possible.
I will 100%. I think that's the Orwellism. 1984 is what I constantly thought of, especially in Infinite, and because like by the time you get to Rapture in Bioshock, again speaking just from my experience, by the time you get, it's already fallen, right? It's already gone through the whole Civil War, I think is what it is called.
Yeah.
Basically the splicers, I think, are the ones that are like the crazy guys. They basically control everything. They don't control because they're absolutely insane, but they are the only ones left because all the sane people have been killed. And, most of them have been. And the ones that haven't are, protecting themselves and not wanting anything to do. And so like you see the negative consequence of the attempt at a utopia in the first one. In the second one, it was kind of just a continuation of that dystopian fall. And then in Infinite, I played the first, I think I got through getting like 1 or 2 of the powers. And so I didn't get enough to get like, okay, I know what's really going on here. But like the feeling I got was kind of you were getting put into a utopian society right at the brink of that civil war. And I'm definitely on thin ice as far as my understanding of Infinite there, but that was the feeling that I got at the beginning of the game. But I guess let's talk about Bioshock 2 really briefly, just as a summary. Demigod, do you want to take over for that one, or?
No, yeah. So Bioshock 2 takes place 8 years after the first game. And one would think that the ending of the first game actually matters to Bioshock 2. And it really doesn't, because whatever theoretically, whatever choices that Jack had made in the first game are still going to lead to the story of the second game. And in that game, you have Sophia Lamb, who was a psychiatrist who was working under Andrew Ryan, the founder of the city. And she's now trying to create a utopian person, if that's possible. She has found that there are properties of Adam that allow memories on top of genetics to be transferred from one being to another. And so she has this, collectivist idea of having her daughter be this idyllic figure in society. And she believes that by having this one person who is omniscient, omnipotent, that really society will fall in line and her daughter will be able to lead people to glory or to this idea of utopia that she has. I mean, it's a stark contrast to what Andrew Ryan believed, where, everything was all the potential and all the possibilities for a better future are all within the individual. And Sophia Lamb just has this idea that everybody has great ideas, but put them all into one person and we might actually be able to do something instead of having one person do their job and one person do another thing. And it, in both respects, it gets all messy.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
But yeah, that's the basic overview. By the time you start playing Bioshock 2, Rapture's gone even more to hell than it's already been because of the events that took place in the first game. Gameplay wise, I think it's actually a little bit more fun because you're playing as a Big Daddy, which, when you play the first game, every time you hear a whale noise, you start having a heart attack. And I don't know about you guys, but I work in a museum where we have a hall of ocean life, and all I hear are whale noises, and I still get panic attacks when I'm walking through there. So
that's very specific.
Oh no! It makes perfect sense.
Specific.
It is
no.
It's a
no. Please, Justin, play the game, and when you hear a whale noise,
and then get a job at a museum.
Justin, if you come to New York City, I'll give you a personal tour.
Nice. I got family there.
He's already like, okay, next
planning
week,
it out.
Next week I have 2 days that I can.
But no, yeah, I think gameplay wise, it's a lot more fun. You can play as a Big Daddy. You don't feel so
like squishy.
You don't feel so squishy.
No, my thing with Bioshock 2 was more exactly kind of what you were saying. Is like I played it right on the tail end of Bioshock, and it was just kind of like I was like, wait, hang on, what? Like I what's going on, but it's kind of a jarring disconnect. At least it was for me.
Yes,
from the first to the second, because I was like, wait, hang on, I thought we fixed, in game. I was like, I thought we fixed all this. Why are you doing this again? Like, are you stupid? Like, so
for me, and when I played 2, it felt like a game company was reaching to make a predecessor for a game that was very successful. It didn't felt like it had the same type of vibe and fluidity that the first game had. It just felt like it was kind of like tacked on. Onto the second, onto the first game, where the first game felt like there was a very clear direction and where they wanted to go, where the second one was just kind of like, yeah, let's play as a Big Daddy. That sounds like fun. Yeah, okay, then how are we gonna make them do that? We'll think of something. That's how I felt about the second one. But then I don't know. Do you feel the same way, Demi, or do you really like the second one?
Well, I started playing the game series with a friend who had already played it. So he said, he's like, Bioshock 2 is kind of underrated between the three of them, but it's not bad. When I played it, I felt like when I played Bioshock 1, I was at one end of the spectrum, and when I played Bioshock 2, I was at the other end. All they did was flip the scenarios. So that was I kind of went about it just playing it and not really appreciating what it was. And I think a lot of the disconnect comes in the fact that you have the recordings, which, Bungie should try and use for Grimoire. But you have the recordings where you don't actually understand what's happening, or you don't understand why you are doing what you're doing throughout the story until you start listening to the recordings, because that's how a lot of the lore and a lot of the story for pretty much all 3 games, that's how you have access to it. So actually, as I was doing the summaries for this, I started appreciating it a little bit more because I was remembering things, remembering how certain events took place. But on my initial playthrough, I thought it was very bare bones. I enjoyed it. I liked the new mechanics. I hated the big sisters, but as a whole, it was an okay game. It was not nearly as enjoyable as I found Bioshock 1, and Bioshock Infinite's one of my top 5 favorite games. So it's the worst of the 3 of them, but it really takes playing all 3 games, because you kind of, especially after Burial at Sea, everything makes a little bit more sense. So,
right. Well, and I think, talking about that jarring sensation, I think, we did already kind of mention this, is Bioshock 2 was actually developed by a different company. Like Bioshock and Bioshock Infinite were by Irrational Games, whereas Bioshock 2 was 2K Marin. Irrational Games was also, it used to be 2K, like all of these used to be under the 2K umbrella, basically. 2K Boston, I think, was the former name. Hang on, let me make sure I'm saying that correctly. I think that's accurate. Yeah, 2K Boston became Irrational Games, and they teamed up with 2K Australia, so these were basically 2 segments underneath 2K Games, and that was Bioshock. And then Bioshock 2 came out, and it was a completely, basically different studio. I mean, it wasn't, but it was, kind of like Ubisoft Montreal and Ubisoft Paris. There were different studios, and so like it's a different style, and I think that kind of actually speaks to where my disconnect, just as a game player, was from. And then, like, when I was playing Bioshock, it was definitely, when I played the first couple, parts, I was like, oh, this is the game I remember. Like, this, I guess, I don't know, like the smoothness of the integration of the story, and I don't know how to describe that. I don't really know what I'm trying to describe. It's just like that unconscious, this feels right thing. It definitely existed with Infinite and Bioshock, but didn't exist with 2. And I think Well, if that makes any sense.
No. I kind of think of Bioshock 2 for me is less a sequel and more of an expansion of the story of Rapture. It's not really a continuation, but it adds to the lore and the mythology of the entire Bioshock universe, specifically in regards to Rapture itself. Because I like a lot of what it did with the Big Daddies and Little Sisters, going to more depth of their stories, especially for Subject Delta. In a game where it's really hard to see a character as human, they really humanize the Big Daddies, because even there's a severe lack of humanity between all 3 games.
Yeah. And that's
from the mechanical and the craze to the quite human. So I think it did well, and I think in terms of gameplay wise, I think it kind of advanced the gameplay. But yeah, there's something that is lackluster about the integration between the game and the story itself, and then trying to connect that to Bioshock 1.
Right. And I definitely agree with you that it's the lesser of the 3, which by no means that it's a lesser game. It's still a very good game, but when you hold it to the bar, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. When you hold it to the bar that, for me, Bioshock and Infinite set, Bioshock 2 was, below that. But Mel, I know you wanted to...
now that I'm thinking about it and trying to like recall because I played them not too long after they came out, so this is quite a bit ago. But I think with the first Bioshock, you went into this scenario and you weren't really sure what's going on, and not like saying you don't know what's going on too, but like Rapture was new. You found you uncovered this type of mystery to it, and you were discovering all these secrets and things about it. And I feel like Infinite had the same type of magical mysteriousness about it. Like you knew it was a Bioshock game, so you kind of knew in what general direction they're probably going to go. But like you are going into this world, you're existing in this new area where it was. You have no idea what's going on. Whereas Bioshock 2, as much as I love Rapture, I definitely felt that it wasn't fresh as much to me. Like I felt like they could have done a lot more with 2 than what they did. Like I'm like, well, this I don't know. It really felt like they phoned it in on 2, and I don't know. Like there's just I wanted to like 2. And I really liked being back in Rapture because I love Rapture. I really love the concept and everything about Rapture, what they did. But I don't know. It just doesn't sit right with me. It feels more like a DLC than a full-on game, if that makes sense. Whereas like the DLC from Infinite, DLC felt like more like an actual continuation of the game than what Bioshock 2 gave me. I don't know. I don't know if that makes any sense at all. But that's how I kind of perceive it as from the prism of looking at it from as a player.
No, and I mean, I guess I think that really does, explain what that is similar to what I'm feeling too. So, yes, continue with the summary before we tear it apart anymore.
Okay, so are we on to
Infinite? Let's see. So plot on Bioshock 2, you play a Big Daddy, i.e. Delta, subject Delta. You get introduced to a little sister. We already talked about that. Again, the ending looks like it depends on your choices.
Yeah, but I think the ending, like I said, the middle road for the endings is a bit more understandable to tell the difference, but the endings are actually pretty much the same. When you have the ending for Bioshock 1, you have Jack bringing the little sisters to the surface world and essentially...
Spoiler alert.
Well.
No, okay, it's fine. It's fine.
I was wondering, are we gonna?
Nice.
Should we just like forever from this point on just say spoiler alert? Because I feel like we can't really.
Yeah, I mean,
especially you can't do this and not spoil things.
Especially with I think 2. Well, I don't know. The ending for 2 seems like it has a little bit more impact. Does it?
Well, here's the thing. Does it? That is the question, right? Because in Bioshock 1,
it's the last one. Okay.
Yeah, in Bioshock 1, you either have Jack having a full life with, now you could say, his adoptive daughters, or you have him taking control of Rapture and preparing an assault against the surface world.
Oh god, and that never ends well. Because doesn't he get? I think that one you get bombed, don't you? Eventually,
I think it's that he like steals he steals missiles from a submarine or something like that.
Yeah, I want to say they get onto a submarine and the splicers come out.
Yeah, so like the good if you're a super duper angel, the ending is
that was me.
You take 5 little sisters up to the surface, and you get to live out your life, singing Kumbaya and all that fun stuff. And then if you killed everybody, the ending is basically Jack goes into megalomaniac mode and tries to take on everybody. I'm trying to find where my notes talked about this, but oh yeah, here we go. He turns on the little sister and basically harvests all their atoms. Well, because you've harvested all their atoms. And then Tenenbaum who is narrating this entire thing, this is the major difference. If you saved everyone, she's very happy as she narrates and talks about how they go on and live full lives, and and then eventually, Jack dies, and they, go on and live peacefully and blah blah blah. If you killed everyone, she narrates the entire downfall and basically condemns Jack in everything that he does. And condemns everything, and is like, no. And then oh geez, and it just gets really messy. And then if you kill more than one little sister but don't kill them all, the second ending, he still like goes on to take on the world with the stolen nuclear missiles, but Tenenbaum's narration is just kind of like sad. It's not angry. And that's really, really the big difference. So, and then Bioshock 2, it's similar thing, except reversed, right? Because Eleanor, the little sister, is the one that, like, your choices are Eleanor will kill Delta and take his atom and then, like, go and try to become world domination.
I think she kills him. I think she kills him no matter what.
Well, he dies. He dies
in one reality, it's she takes his atom in remembrance of him to do something good in the world, and in the other, she sort of has this dialogue where she says, "I've learned from what you've done, and so I will act upon that." So if you've killed all the little sisters, you have now, you've created you've created your own monster.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, again, consequence of your choices. And I think with Bioshock 2, the way I read it, the way that I'm reading the summary here, is the sense that I get is that Eleanor really is presented as a child, in the sense that she follows your example. If you kill everyone, and when she inherits this giant amount of power, she's going to do what she's been exposed to. So if you kill everyone, she's gonna go kill everyone. If you don't kill everyone, she's gonna go and not, it's not just a consequence for your character, but it's a consequence for the world, quote, around that, the world in which those characters exist. So, and then that brings us to Bioshock Infinite, which requires us to jump back, 50 years, 48 years?
From Bioshock 1?
Oh,
that's
no,
50-something years, 56,
because it's
50.
What is it, 1912?
1912 to 1959.
Okay, yeah. So Bioshock, and this is what I was saying, is Bioshock Infinite takes place chronologically before all the others, which is... It's becoming a common thing in games, but it was not a common thing from what I remember when I first was like, wait, what's going on? So, Demi, you want to give us a quick introduction to Infinite?
So Infinite, you have, very much the opposite. Where in Rapture you had a world you had a city that was, where science and art was unencumbered. Now you have a city where religion is the complete and absolute force that runs the city of Columbia, which is a city in the sky. And as Booker DeWitt, you find yourself trying to settle a debt to this unknown person by essentially kidnapping a girl from her tower and bringing her back to wherever she needs to go. That is the easiest way to summarize that, because everything else after this point is going to be so difficult.
Basically, it's Mario. It's Mario, and the princess was in the tower.
But the princess she's in the tower, and she's not going to move from the tower. You get her. The problem after that is keeping her with you.
Oh, I can't. Oh God, that just brings to mind horrible Resident Evil games with NPCs. Oh God.
Actually, unlike the Resident Evil games where like Ashley did nothing for you, Elizabeth
Except yell at
actually, yeah, except for yell, Elizabeth was actually very useful, and I did not mind her having her when I was playing. Like, she would often be like, "Hey, Booker," and then like throw me exactly what I needed.
Booker, catch!
I'm like, "Oh my god, thank you, Elizabeth. You're an angel."
She even pays you just for walking down the street. That's great.
Yeah, she gave me money and ammo and all the other stuff that I needed, which I don't know how much we wanted. We'll go ahead and talk about all this.
It was bad. I played Infinite first out of all 3 games. When I played Bioshock 1, I was like, "Where's my companion?"
Oh man, see, am I the only one who has
hallway.
played them like in order of release?
Are you?
Wow.
Little girl, you look like a younger version of my. Oh God, no!
Yeah, no,
car.
just
It's a mistake.
those whale noises.
Well, and okay, so that I guess let's open up the Pandora's box a little bit here, because with
Oh boy.
well, I mean, with Infinite, what they do is you start getting the sense of like, okay, what in the hell is going on with like not like within the individual games, but within like the series, because it doesn't make any sense. Because when you're in Rapture, you don't hear about Columbia. And when you're in Columbia, you don't hear about Rapture. Or at least, like you would think with, something as big as, I don't know, a city that flies, you would hear about it. Or, an entire city underneath the ocean, the one or the other would hear about it. And this is where it gets really, really fun, because during this entire conflict in Infinite, Booker, your main character, learns that Elizabeth possesses this really cool ability to manipulate something called tears. Basically, she can create holes in the space-time continuum. Yay! Because that never makes things simple. So
Hold on to your seats, boys and girls.
Yeah,
It's going to get ugly.
Bioshock exists in a universe that is it is modeled off parallel universe models. Like, it is basically the understanding of Bioshock as a series is that it exists in a multiverse. And that, for a game that is based entirely, really heavily, it's always emphasizing this aspect of choice. That's really funny to me, because the entire point of a multiverse is that it doesn't matter what choice you make. You've made all choices. Like there's a and Demigod sent me a message before we did this, and he's like, "You're gonna have to get ready for multiverse explanations." So there are people much more intelligent than myself who can probably explain this much better and in a lot longer. So I'm going to just be really simple. And basically every reality in a multiverse model, multiverse is another word for a parallel universe theory, which is sorry. Yes, Earth 1 and Earth 2. That's exactly. Sorry, Demigod sending me images. So a parallel universe is a hypothetical self-contained reality that basically coexists with our own. There are different types of parallel universes, but the most common one is usually a multiverse in science fiction. You also, like, technically speaking, you can also have like hyperspace, you can have time travel, alternate history. You have things like the DC's world, which has Earth 1, Earth 2, all those. Comic books really, that's kind of how they explain retcons a lot of times is, oh, this is Earth 1, or, this is the Amazing Spider-Man, or the, Ultimate Spider, those are all different things. Yeah, Mage in chat. Fringe, huge parallel universe there. There was only 2 in that one. In Bioshock, it kind of seems like there's actually it seems like a more pure form of a multiverse, in which what I mean by that is every reality has certain constants, but it also has certain variables. And this kind of goes back to that quote that, Demi was talking at the beginning. There is always a man, always a city, and always a lighthouse. So those are your constants. They have a man, a city, and a lighthouse. The variables are names, places, that like geographical places. Columbia is in the sky. Rapture is under the water. And your main characters are Jack and Booker. You have little sisters and Elizabeth. You have big daddies. You have a character named Songbird in Infinite. There's plasmids and vigors. The main characters are Andrew Ryan, or the main bad guys, quote, is Andrew Ryan, and then an individual who goes by the name of Zachary Comstock. Frank Fontaine, Daisy Fitzroy. You have is it Suchong and Jeremiah Fink? These are all parallels of each other, but they all exist at the same time. And there's a really Paul Tassi over at Forbes really did actually a very decent job of summarizing this entire thing with an article that he has called "The One Twist in Bioshock Infinite You Might Have Missed Completely." And I'm going to link this in the show notes because it's a very good article. It's actually pretty short too. But he makes the point also that, when you look at it, and he has the pictures. I can't, obviously a podcast I can't show you, but he has a picture of a little sister and the picture of Elizabeth. And if you hold them side by side, it's very evident that these are parallels of each other. The dress style is very, I'm not going to get into Mel's topic, but the dressing style, the color coordination, it is very, 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 very similar. And so there's a common theory, I guess, with multiverses that basically the creation of a multiverse is whenever you make a choice, which again, ironic, a little bit interesting with Bioshock because the entire series is based around choices. But anytime you make a choice, technically speaking, in this theory, it creates a splinter off. Yeah, fabric theory. It creates a splinter off. And so every time, so like if am I going to have coffee or a soda? Something as trivial as that, you have an infinite expanding number of parallel universes, all of which exist where they all have the same constants and the same not the same variables, but you have same constants. And each one of these choices creates, just infinitely, it continuously expands. And that's the universe in which Bioshock exists. And the reason we know this is actually the DLC for Bioshock Infinite, which was Burial at Sea. And this was a very important DLC because what it did was it introduced the characters from Infinite, but it introduced them as completely different characters. So they were the same characters, but they were different people. So like episode 1, again, if you haven't figured it out, spoiler alert, episode 1 of Burial at Sea is you play as Booker, but instead of the guy who's swinging through the skies, he's a private investigator in Rapture, which is it kind of makes you go, wait, what? And throughout the episode, you encounter Elizabeth, who is looking for a girl named Sally, and that leads to the introduction to basically the introduction. I mean, so through episode 1 and episode 2 of Burial at Sea, that leads to the introduction to Bioshock. It is the tie-in from Infinite to Bioshock, and really Bioshock 2 as well. But throughout episode 1, you basically start also getting confirmation that Booker is Comstock. So he becomes his own worst enemy in a different universe, basically. There's a lot of problems with this because if I remember, I was reading some of the critiques to this entire theory. I guess there's a few points at which people who should recognize him don't recognize him in game. Like, I guess there's a few notable NPCs that are like, they're like, oh, who are you? You're Booker. But if Booker was a younger version of Comstock, oh god. My head hurts.
Well, yeah.
But and
So,
I guess no, go for it.
No, I thought I just reading through the story, I thought it was the other way around. I thought didn't you say that Comstock became Booker?
No, Booker became Comstock.
All right. Okay, that's the way I read it.
Yeah,
too.
so he basically yeah,
I'm gonna hurt Justin's mind in a second. But keep going.
so
as you were.
So okay, so episode 1 of Burial at Sea basically ends with Booker realizing. So like in one of these parallel universes, so one of these things, Booker becomes Comstock, and he goes to steal Anna, who is Elizabeth, by the way. So, so Booker is Comstock. He is going to steal Anna as a baby from an alternate version of himself. But in this universe, he doesn't manage to steal Anna fully before the portal closes. So imagine Fringe with Walter, and I can't remember the kid's name, but basically imagine the portal closing on his son and killing him. Instead of him actually stealing him fully. So I just spoiled 2 things for everyone. Congratulations.
Thanks. I've never seen Fringe.
Oh my gosh. What? How did you? Oh my gosh. You need to fix that immediately.
Neither have I.
Oh my,
so.
I'm done.
Neither have most people.
Oh my God. Have you seen? Okay. Here's the deciding factor whether or not I hang up this call. Have you seen Firefly?
Yes.
Yeah. No, I used to catch them in jars.
I know you have, Justin. Shut up.
Well, I guess I'm not coming back for another
guest. You need to come. Oh gosh. Okay. Anyways,
friend. We just unfriended
Peter. If Peter died when he was stealing him, like that's thank you, Mage. That's what basically happened, and Comstock is so like traumatized by this that he basically wipes his own memories and goes to a third dimension where Columbia doesn't exist, and then takes on the identity of Booker within so he is Booker. He becomes Comstock. He tries to steal from another Booker. That gets screwed up. So then he goes to another dimension and becomes Booker again. That's episode 1.
Can I
yeah, go
critique this real quick?
Yeah.
This storytelling is rude.
Rude?
It's rude.
Yeah, well, Comstock is kind of a
lot.
Yeah, no,
Comstock.
it's like, oh my God. But I mean, the thing is like, and so
that is a lot.
Episode 2.
Just remember, episode 1 is just like 3 hours long, by the way.
Yeah.
It's very short, and there's a lot of content in 3 hours.
Oh my gosh.
Whereas if you play episode 2, I believe is about 6 or 7 hours if you really like make sure you do everything before the end of the game. And it doesn't really help you feel any better. I think I spent a lot more time trying to figure out how the ending of that justified everything I had just played and will play if I was going to replay Bioshock 1 then. And it hurt.
It seems that way.
And I also realized that the ending of Burial at Sea 2 is just another reality that doesn't even count. It's not even the direct prologue to Bioshock 1. It is the prologue to one of the endings of Bioshock 1.
Yes. And that's where the multiverse model starts like really like fraying at the edges, is because you start realizing that every time you make a choice in this game, technically speaking, you're creating another dimension. Like that's why within the game, you can technically go back and play it and you're actually still in the same game. You're just experiencing a different dimension.
So example, in the middle of Bioshock Infinite, Booker and Elizabeth open a tear to a different reality to find, I forget what the character's name is, but they're finding a gunsmith who in one reality is dead, or in the main reality that you start the game in, they jump to a different reality where he might be alive. And then from there, you're actually trying to figure out what happened to the first. Now they're gone. So what is going on there?
That point in Infinite, the very first time you do that, you're like, wait,
you don't really pay attention to it.
Yeah, because it's such I don't know. Like I remember that being a very big turning point in the game, but it story wise and how heavy that action was by Elizabeth was kind of glossed over, and you don't understand. Like you didn't really like sink in, and towards the end of the game when you start going, wait, what?
Because what you have to remember is when she opens a tear to that second universe.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's also when the Vox Populi is already at their height and they're already actively attacking Columbia, which which is not really it's very low key in the first reality that you start in because Davy Fitzroy is on the run somewhere. So you not only jump into a different reality, but it almost seems like you're time skipping as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the only understanding you get from that is, I believe Mr. Chang's wife in the first reality is Asian, and in the second reality she's a white woman. Which is, when you walk by it, I think one of the two characters mentions it, but then after that it's like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, we'll just keep going, hope we find him.
Well, and it's like, and so the other problem with parallel universes and time travel in general is basically called it's basically the grandfather problem issue, the grandfather effect,
paradox.
Yeah, is it the grandfather paradox or grandfather?
Yeah, that's what it's called.
Okay. Basically, the only way that you can get around this paradox is if you understand the events of what is happening as being simultaneous. So like, because there are points in the Bioshock game, in the lore, in which Elizabeth, who has the capability to create tears in the time-space continuum, not just space continuum, actually goes back and changes things that would negate events from happening. Now, you can get around this by explaining it, being, oh, that's just a different dimension. But then you get into the problem of like, in your home, like let's just call it, let's call the dimension you are born in your home dimension. In your home dimension, then technically speaking, nothing's ever changed. It's still rolling down the hill the way it's going to roll down the hill. You can't actually change it. It's a infinite loop of a paradox, because you either can change something or you can't change anything. You can either change everything or nothing in a multiverse model, depending on the nuanced version of the model that you're following. So,
yeah, and there's actually a Comstock quote and I don't have it in front of me, but where he's talking about a baptism, and he says, for every sinner that's saved, maybe there's another version of him with his sin still intact. Like the guy walks away from the baptism saved, but in another, timeline or dimension, if you will, there's his unbaptized self still exists.
Yeah, and that's very much a reflection on himself, because he knows who he is and he knows where he came from. And given the insight that Comstock has into all of the other universes within the series of Bioshock, he knows that there's another instance of himself that is Zachary Comstock, and he knows that there's another instance of himself that remained Booker DeWitt, who is still suffering from alcoholism and gambling and all this stuff. So it makes a lot of sense, and I like I guess now it does make a little bit more sense of things happening simultaneously, especially when I think of Bioshock 2, because in Bioshock 2 you actually have a little bit more choices than you do in Bioshock 1. In Bioshock 1 you only have the choices of killing or saving the little sisters. And in Bioshock 2 you actually have the choice of killing and saving some citizens who are significant to the storyline. So one of them is, I believe, Eleanor's babysitter. And it's just minor choices like that, but it makes a lot more sense. So in one universe, or at the same time, Delta's saving this woman and he's killing her at the same time.
Right. Well, because there's the other Comstock. I'm trying to find the Comstock quote that I was just thinking of, and it might be the one you're thinking of, Justin. But it was where'd it go? Where'd it go? It says, one man goes into the waters of baptism, a different man comes out, born again. But who is that man who lies submerged? Perhaps that swimmer is both a sinner and a saint until he is revealed unto the eyes of man. So, I mean, and again, it's all about choice in Bioshock. But at the same time, it doesn't matter, which is infinitely frustrating because it makes me feel like everyone's response to Mass Effect.
Yeah.
Your choices matter. Your choices matter. Your choices matter. The ending of Mass Effect 3, they really don't.
That's a BioWare game for you.
I always kind of wondered if the people who created the Bioshock series made Bioshock the first one and like just had that as a contained story, because it can stand as its own contained story. You don't have to really go anymore or go into parallel universes. And then when they realized they really couldn't do much more with Rapture besides what they did, and like, what if we did parallel universes? Like, I always wondered that in my mind, because like once you play through Infinite and after the lore and the story gets so complex and heavy, and I think it's one of the most complex, heavy type of stories I've ever come across in a game. Like, trying to go through all of it, even now after I've played them multiple times, still makes my brain hurt. So I sometimes wonder if someone just kind of threw that out and they're like, yeah, let's run with that. Because sometimes it feels like that was what they decided upon so they can build more quote unquote Bioshock games. So
that seems to be the MO of whoever made of the developers in Irrational Games. I've not played System Shock, and I know Bioshock is the spiritual successor of that, and I think System Shock is actually having a remastering next year. But the developers of Bioshock, they had attempted to make a game called The Black Glove, I think it was called, which seemed to have an element of choice and affecting the results of or affecting the storyline depending on your choice. And that also, amongst other things, that also seems to be what their newest game seems to be about. We Happy Few, that was had a trailer during E3, which the moment I looked at it, I was like, "This looks just like Bioshock."
Same.
But it even with the little that it showed, it does seem to have that same sort of air about it, that there is a certain level of player choice and that will affect the storyline. Now, it might not result in a different ending because they might have set endings in mind, but I don't believe that that's to take away from the choices that you make as the player. It's just to show that there is an inevitability of how things will happen. So this all goes back to, us starting this episode, about the illusion of choice. And I think the only characters in the Bioshock series that do have some kind of choice are Elizabeth and then the Lutece twins, who are, oh my God.
Yeah,
hurts.
Those individuals are...
That hurts. And they're so funny, and they're so significant to the entire storyline of Bioshock Infinite, but they are a walking brain tumor.
So, really, really quick, the Lutece twins are Robert and Rosalind, and basically they're two individuals who direct Booker to Columbia, and they kind of appear throughout the game. And I think they appear, so like I'm just reading basically a basic summary of them. They appear to be near identical fraternal twins, but it's later revealed that they are the same person from two different realities. And it gets really fun because not only are they different genders, they also have completely different philosophies, moral approaches to everything. they're oh my. So Rosalind is the more technical, I think. No,
she's the fatalist between the two of them.
Right. Rosalind's the one that developed the technology to keep Columbia afloat.
Yes.
And she's also the one who initially made contact with Robert. And then together they worked out how to create tears within the dimensions and to communicate and actually cross between dimensions. And then apparently over the game, the reason that they're helping Booker is because Comstock actually tried to kill them by screwing with one of his or one of their devices, I guess. So while they were traveling, it missed, like, I don't know, like it was supposed to kill them, but instead they ended up in like this weird existential state of flux, which means that they can see everything at the same time. And so now they're just like, hey, we're going to be the balancing agents of reality, and we're going to correct all the imbalances without actually manipulating anything. Hence them helping Booker.
Well, I don't think they have the same all-powerful influence over the realities the same way Elizabeth does.
Right.
But they do live in all realities except one, and it's the reality that they were killed. The explosion did technically kill them in that reality, and I think they make a point of saying in Burial at Sea 2 that the reason Elizabeth is without her powers when she returns is because she returned to a reality in which she was killed.
Yeah.
So they choose not to return to that reality because, number one, basically they love each other. They love being with each other. I mean, God, how more egotistical could you be if you love being with the same person? But I mean, the whole reason that Booker even goes to Columbia is because Robert makes the ultimatum that he will willingly leave Rosalind unless she agrees to help him, redeem Booker, essentially. So there is a single limitation that they have, but they are just completely wildly and unexpected. If you play Bioshock Infinite before really anything exciting happens, before you even get to the fair, Booker can just walk around Columbia and he can look through one of the scopes and look at Monument Island, where they have the big angel statue of Elizabeth. If you look down, I think you see Robert juggling and Rosalind's just watching him. But when you exit from the scope, they're not there anymore. So they're just pains in the
I almost feel like they were kind of like the chaos theory throughout the game. Like they're like just when you think
Jeff Goldblum in the background from Jurassic Park.
Yeah. I was just kind of like they were there, and like once when you think you were figuring things out, they're like, oh no, sweet child.
Yeah, there's one part in the game where I think it's very late in the game, and as Booker and Elizabeth are talking, there's like these different billboards along the skyline, and they just like keep teleporting between billboards, just doing one thing and another, and it's just like, God, you guys are such assholes. just leave. You're not helping me figure out what's going on. But you learn that they're hugely influential, especially in Elizabeth's life, and you won't actually learn that until you play Burial at Sea. So they're a hidden gem.
Well, you want to unleash the Mel?
I want to say one thing before we kind of get into that. That
okay.
One thing I loved about the Infinite is that gave you a hint to before you got like deep down into the nitty gritty of all the different parallel universes before it was really revealed in game. If you're going around, you can notice that the music playing throughout the whole entire game in Infinite is actually Muse songs from the 1980s. And you sit in there and you're listening to it, and the first time you play through, I'm like, wait a minute, there's that, wait, what? Because in Bioshock 1, for the most part, they try to keep music that was kind of period. Most of the stuff they play is from the 20s and 30s, and from the 40s. A lot of 40s music.
Some Frank Sinatra.
Sinatra was more closer to the era for which that was played in, but they play a lot of Andrews Sisters, which is like from like the early 40s. So it, like, if you think about it now, it's like listening to classic rock music, which I guess is not too far-fetched if Rapture has been established for, over 10 years, which I think it was. I know anyways. So, but specifically with Infinite, I loved that little bit of information that they gave you that was very subtle, because the way they delivered the music was very true to that time period of the 1912. But it's with lyrics that people would know. So if you go back and listen to the soundtrack, it's a great listen. And definitely if you go through, because a lot of times when you're playing Infinite, you don't really pay attention too much of the music because you just kind of read it as background music. You're like, oh yeah, background music. But pay attention to it. And I want to say there were some other things too that were on billboards and signs and stuff that were kind of like, wait, what are you talking about? So yeah, that was one thing that I loved. I loved about Infinite in general. So
I say we talk about the fashion.
The fashion? Where do you want me to start?
I don't know. This is your specialty.
Geez. I was going through some of it, going back through the fashion stuff again. And for me, Bioshock 1's always has been and will be my favorite game. And when you look at that, you can, and before you even really know what had occurred, that was during the New Year's celebration, when you first start seeing splicers, what's the first thing you notice besides their awful, gross, disgusting, bloody selves is that they're wearing formal wear. Almost all of the people in Bioshock 1 are wearing formal wear. They have their masks on, which adds this, when you first think about, it's a sense of creepy element, but you can tell that when this occurred, when the whole entire, I guess, rupture between when Fontaine came out and he, pretty much Andrew Ryan, whatever you want to call him, released everything, that this was in the middle of obviously a big event. But yeah, and I can't, it's hard to go into this one because they don't really go too much into the fashion and the costuming for a lot of this stuff. I think if anyone you can go a little bit more into is Elizabeth and Booker, because I feel like they did spend a little bit more time, because at that point the stories were much more established and they had a lot more to work on. Because if you look at, Blue mentioned it earlier, if you look at the actual colors and style and silhouette of Elizabeth and her original in the outfit that she picked up that was quote unquote her mom's, which is the long blue skirt, the white corset, and then like the blue bolero. It's the exact same type of style as the little sisters. The white that's in her outfit is the same proportion for which the little sisters' outfits are on too. So like you have the bib and then you have the apron. It's the same proportion. And even have it down to like just the color of the hair and everything. So like when you, if you notice that, then you're like, wait a minute here. So that's pretty interesting. And I like the fact that with Elizabeth, when she has the mom's outfit on, that they specifically chose a corset that has lines in it, for a sense that when you think of corsets, you think of them as kind of something that contains you, that cages you. And what is Elizabeth? She's just something that is contained within these different, realities. Like out of anyone, I feel like Elizabeth, I guess Elizabeth has the most choice out of everyone being able to do her tears and stuff. but yeah, I'm trying to go mentally over the rest of them in my mind as we're going here. Booker's kind of interesting, especially when you first see Booker. When you just look at that cover of him, you can tell that he is someone that maybe isn't the best of guys, just by his demeanor. I mean, his sleeves are rolled up. It is signifying that obviously he's going to get down and dirty with something. You know, he's a man using his hands. His jacket is not buttoned at all. And so like, if you think about it, like when you look at most of the people within Columbia, and even if you look at the Andrew Ryan, Andrew Ryan's the main guy that runs Rapture. His jacket is buttoned. And you can see that, you know, like they're all very well put together. And by just the simple fact of it having an unbuttoned shirt kind of gives you the sense of that he's not necessarily as rigid. He's a little bit more freeform, a little bit more of an open person. Let's see. Especially, again, remember how we were talking last time about Riddick? We were talking about Riddick, how he has stuff wrapped around his hands. Booker has that. And within the Bioshock series, you're looking at your players, the person you're playing, either Booker or Jack's hands, almost the whole entire game. Like that's what you see, and you see the wrapped hands to hide his branding of AD on himself. But you kind of, at first you think about, okay, this guy, he looks a little disheveled, his hair is a mess, his sleeves are rolled up, he has, obviously his hands are really messed up, so you get the sense of that he's just not really with it, you know, like as a contrast, if you look at Andrew Ryan, or even Comstock, they have a nice suit on, everything's clean, everything's buttoned, everything matches. Nothing on Booker's outfit matches. I mean, he has striped pants with a blue vest with a pattern, like with detail on it, and then a black shirt and a red tie. Like it works in a weird, strange way, but it's not something that you wear together. So, but yeah, that's kind of the basics that I kind of wanted to go over in terms of their fashion. Their costumes aren't crazy in depth, which is fine. It's not like there's a lot of like other things hanging off of them and stuff. But yeah, do you have any other things that you guys want to add that you've noticed on their outfits, and you're just like, hey Mel, why do you think that's there? So.
Go for it, Josh. Or
Josh.
Sorry,
anyone,
David got
person.
No, I've got something. I was being polite.
Oh, okay,
You're being
Justin.
polite.
Go, Justin, go.
No, the thing that intrigues me more than anything, wardrobe wise, in the whole series, is Big Daddy's atmospheric diving suit. And if you go through and do any kind of research on these big atmospheric diving suits, which could weigh upwards of like 600-700 pounds, they're just so outlandish, and they look so steampunk sci-fi just on face value. How this was the first time one of them made it in a video game is beyond me.
Well, if you look at a Big Daddy, and you have to think about Rapture, like Under the Sea. So when I look at the Big Daddy specifically, it makes me think of those deep sea creatures that are just over the top and ridiculous and scary. And what is a Big Daddy when you're playing?
A whale.
It's big,
A whale.
ominous, and scary. You know, like as soon as you hear that sound and you see those glowing eyes, you know you better hunker down for a battle. Like you better be ready, you know? So I mean, and if you look at the Big Daddy outfits, like, yeah, obviously it goes under the sea, but it's very also reminiscent, I feel, of like space as well. So when you think of, and also space is a very scary place, and it's one of our few frontiers that humans haven't discovered, that in the very bottom of the sea. So I can definitely understand why they pull in a lot of things that are reminiscent of like spacesuits, and then putting in the deep sea touches as well. I mean, you look at a normal standard Big Daddy with the Rand helmet and the glowing, what is it, balls eyes, I guess you can see, and then the giant drill.
The drill was what I was gonna say. It was like, if nothing else, run away from that.
So are we thinking that's task functional?
Oh no, it is.
He's got on his hand.
Yeah, they actually were the builders of Rapture.
Okay,
and they're basically
they go outside.
When you play Burial at Sea episode 1, you actually see a Big Daddy on the outside. He's drilling into the bedrock, or he's drilling into the seafloor, and then he pulls a Batman and he shoots the drill across to an underwater cliff, and he swings to another side of the city to continue his job, because he's Batman by day and Big Daddy by night.
And I think it's interesting, if we're going to talk about Big Daddy specifically, the evolution of them, because if you look at one of the other ones, the early versions of the Big Daddies that actually look more like
alphas,
they look more like deep. God of words, I'm stumbling over them.
Deep sea divers.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to say. They actually look like he has both of his hands, the helmet, and the body. The whole entire build and silhouette of those are much more human in shape, whereas the Big Daddy you see in Bioshock 1, he's very disproportionate, and he's looming. He's huge, like you have this huge, like I don't remember specifically off the top of my head, but he has this huge back to him, almost like a Quasimodo, if Quasimodo took steroids and like had some type of weird thing going on with him. I mean, and then the fact that he doesn't have a hand, everything about the Big Daddy in 1 tells you that this is some type of creature. It's supposed to be scary. It's supposed to be a monstrous. Whereas if you look at the Deltas, I mean, yeah, they're a little bit more like ominous, but they're not. You don't see them as something that's going to mess you up. You see, okay, deep sea diver. Whereas you look at the Big Daddy, just the way he's structured and the way that he's holding himself and whatnot signifies that he's there to mean business, So, but yeah, I like the Big Daddies are fun. Trying to pull up a picture of the Big Sisters. You guys have anything to add?
Well, let's not forget that there are several different types of Big Daddies.
There are.
The bouncer, which is the one that we see with the drill, that's probably the most known.
Yeah,
that's the nightmare provoking image of the Big Daddies. You have the Alpha series that, like Mel said, looks very typical of a deep sea diver. You have the Rosies, which are the ones that carry a rivet gun. They also have their 2 hands. There's one more that has like a grenade launcher on his shoulder, and that's one of the ones from Bioshock 2 that I never really remember his name. But they are designed differently, and they were actually or each of their features were actually for practical use, not for what they end up being in Bioshocks 1 and 2. But if you buy the Bioshock collection, Bioshock 1 comes with an in-game museum that has concept art, and that has in-game statues of what the concept renderings would have been for Big Daddies, for splicers, for sea slugs, and all that stuff. So you could see, you could have a better understanding of what the evolution development-wise was of the Big Daddies, which I actually thought was kind of interesting. I haven't spent a lot of time in the museum of the game, but when I first looked through it, it's a little bit easier to understand how each Big Daddy functions and what the Big Daddies might have originally been thought of as being.
Yeah.
Instead of just growing to be these, not to throw in Destiny here, but to be these guardians of children.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, it reminds me a lot of, like, again, going to Destiny, the Vex. They're designed with a specific purpose, but they can also mess stuff up.
Right.
Yeah, and just, I mean, a bit off topic, but even just the dynamic of the big daddies and little sister, Songbird and Elizabeth, and wow, I'm gonna go back into the multiverse theory, but how Big Daddy's imprinted on the little sisters. I always forget how that which is which.
Yeah.
But the imprinting that goes on between Big Daddies and little sisters, it happens in different ways, depending on what game you're playing. Which, again, after you've played Bioshock Infinite, means depending on what reality you're in, the imprinting process happened differently. They always result in Suchong dying because he's an idiot, but all be well. In one reality, it deals with pheromones. This is the reality of Bioshock 1. There's a pheromone type plasmid that the little sisters naturally give off. So the big daddies are drawn to them. They're drawn to protecting them, so on and so forth. When you play Bioshock 2, you actually learn that, and all the big daddies are actual people that were grafted into these these diving suits. That whatever. But you learn that Delta's relationship with Eleanor seems to go beyond any pheromone or any sort of plasmid. It does seem like a true parental bond. I cannot say that word. But then in Bioshock Infinite, you see that the imprinting process is very much like what happened with Elizabeth Songbird. Songbird was injured. Elizabeth healed Songbird. I mean, it's pulling a splinter out of a lion cub. And after that, Songbird had this natural affinity towards Elizabeth to keep her safe. And that happens in Burial at Sea Part 2, where Suchong seems to think it's a genetic issue, because he learns of this girl in Colombia, happens to be Elizabeth, who imprinted on a being not unlike the Big Daddies, and he thinks that by using her hair, he can correct the process. And Elizabeth simply learns that the Big Daddies need the little sisters, to survive if they're ever injured. So this Big Daddy, I forget exactly what happens, but he's leaned up against a wall. He must have gotten into some sort of altercation with someone, and the little sister injects Adam into him. And from then on out, the Big Daddy remains that little sister's guardian until whatever happens to her in that reality. So yeah, that's, my brain hurts again.
The other thing I was going to say real quick is the detail that they've put into the plasmid containers for Bioshock. I remember those being really amazing. And plasmids are the supernatural capabilities that Adam powers in the game, in Bioshock. That's in Bioshock 1 and Bioshock 2, plasmids are the supernatural ability. In Infinite, it's vigors, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
there's actually a lot more plasmids in Bioshock 1 because the gene tonics are plasmids. They're just not called plasmids outright. They're passive plasmids. Whereas plasmids are active. You get to control them, right. Use them.
Yeah, and so like that's another element of like the science fiction-esque thing that goes on in Bioshock, is that you do have capabilities that are not just technological in nature. You actually kind of have a supernatural ability, like the pheromone. I guess they all technically are kind of, I guess it's literally supernatural. It's a natural thing that's taken to a next level via the atom.
Well, it's a play off of DNA splicing. I mean, that's why they're
Right.
called splicers. And the Adam is spelled Adam like the name Adam, which is, if you think about it, is kind of ironic because you think of Adam and Eve and all that wonderful jazz. So they're trying to circumvent the actual evolution of a human. So I've always liked that type of play that the game had. So, but I'm pretty sure that that's why they're called splicers, from gene splicing.
Yeah, no, it is
essentially to make because the idea of plasmids was originally to like that whole entire like how we have plastic surgery, make yourself better, make your ideal self greater. Like most of the when you're walking through Rapture, you see the advertisements for a lot of the actual plasmids.
The advertisements are so good.
They're great.
So good.
They're so outrageous. And
with Adam, there's no reason not to be beautiful.
Right. And that's the type of tone that a lot of those advertisements have for these plasmids that are obviously dangerous. You know, like the bees. I want to say the bees were one for like, are kids
useless?
Are useless in game, but like
useless.
But like,
I've never touched the bees.
I didn't either. No, I like the fire a lot.
Old Man Winter, Incinerate, and Electroshock.
Yep. So, but yeah, like the bee one, I specifically had this memory like, oh, are your friends buzzing around you? Are your workmates bothering you? Don't be afraid to unleash swarm on them. And I'm just like, wow, you know, so, but another thing I want to note with the Bioshock series is the era for which they decided to have this game take place. If you think about America, and most of the time when people think when America was quote unquote at its peak and the best time, the ideal time for a lot of things, you see a lot in Fallout 2. They pick this era right after World War II, and that little happy little era of the 1950s, late 40s, before the 60s and a lot of the civil unrest that happened in the US happened. And a lot of times when people reflect, they're like, oh, this is the ideal time. And you see that a lot within the Bioshock, specifically Bioshock. And I always thought it was an interesting time that they had picked to kind of have this whole entire story unfold. Granted, Rapture was created probably in the 1920s based on the architecture for which that the game takes place in, right Demi? Did they ever give a specific time date for when Rapture was created? I want to say they do.
Well, I know the city had been active for about a decade before the civil war within the city occurred.
Yeah.
So it would have needed to have been built at least around the 30s. Well, okay.
Oh, I got it. Yep. No.
Andrew Ryan. Well, the reason why Andrew Ryan even leaves America and has this whole hidden city built is because of the creation of the atomic bomb.
Mm-hmm.
So it would have to have been
in the 40s.
Yeah, it would have to have been in the 40s then.
Yeah.
Which would make it a very quick build to build an entire city at the bottom of the Atlantic and then have it going for about a decade. Yeah.
So that's weird because a lot of the architecture throughout the whole entire game is Art Deco, which is circa 1920s, 1930s. So
that was always the feel I got, even knowing the time it came. Knowing the time period you're playing in.
Yeah, and a lot of the attire that they're wearing is stuff circa the 40s. It's 40s attire, which would make sense because if they actually went down in the 40s, then they wouldn't have known about the styles and stuff that were going on in the 50s.
Yes.
I would imagine so. I mean, maybe they do, but I imagine they kind of sealed themselves off from all type of influence from the surface world.
That's a lot of what the issue in the storyline is that there was this embargo and Fontaine was actively going against Andrew Ryan's embargo rules and so on and so forth.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess if we start thinking about timelines and the fact that it's a multi-universe, it's very possible that it was built prior at some point. I don't know. We can
According to the game, it was. I'm looking at it right now. It was established on November 5th, 1946, and finished in the late 1951. Apparently, we even know the actual geographical location.
It's in the Atlantic, right?
It is 63 degrees something. Yeah, it's basically...
we would need to know because of how the game starts.
Right. It's just west of Iceland's capital. Let's just go with that. That's easier.
Okay. That's really easy.
And you know what? Given the Eureka like presence of the Eureka being the sci-fi show, they had all these top scientists and everything. It does kind of make sense that they would have a city built underwater in such a short period of time.
Well, and they had big daddies.
Yeah, and you got big daddies.
I mean,
around.
Because that was like you said, that was kind of their plan.
As they're drilling outside, recording whale audio so that they can play it as they're walking.
Well, it's also possible if we're dealing with multi-universe theories, just like what happened in Infinite, they could have gone in the future and taken technology and stuff that wasn't developed and brought it back to this time period, and then used it in Bioshock 1. Hence why it was built so fast and beyond the abilities of technology that was available in the 40s.
Time travel messes everything up.
Yeah,
there's some evidence for that in Burial at Sea episode 2.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Because doesn't what is it?
Because Jeremiah Fink from Infinite,
Fink and Sushan.
He goes. Yeah, Fink goes at some point to Rapture and he steals a lot of Suchong's work.
But
Suchong is aware of some sort of cross-dimensional travel, and so he tries to peer into that.
Yeah, it gets messy fast.
Yeah.
It's great. But it gets really messy. And oh man, I want to go back and play it, but I really just want to kind of isolate myself and not think about the multi-dimension theory now. And just go back.
I played it last summer, and playing it, I had like the idea I was going to do like all the what is it? All the silent movies or whatever. I was going to do all the Vox phones and all this stuff. And I'm like, wow, this is what is going on again? Like, why?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I here? Why are you old? Why are you sending me back in time again? By the way, how do you know to send me to this reality where this is gonna? Why are they playing Revenge of the Jedi? I thought that was like rescripted to be Return of the whatever.
You're like, just send me to Rapture and let me live in Rapture, please.
Well, you know what? If I had like 10 hours of playing in Rapture at its height, where it was a beautiful city, because that's the greatest part about Burial at Sea episode 1.
Oh,
it's not actually the story that you're playing; it's that you're seeing Rapture at its height, and you almost feel complete and utter sorrow for what happens to the city. Forget the people in the city, because Sander Cohen could still do several things with his life, but. It's a beautiful city. I'm trying not to. No edits in this episode.
I totally agree. Like, that when I went back and we were actually able to see Rapture, what it looked like in its prime, I didn't that starting area where you have Conan and stuff like that. I didn't want to leave. And I'm like, no, because I'm gonna go someplace and it's gonna be awful and there's civil war and people are gonna die and this beautiful city
that's the
gone.
First time. That's the first time where I see a Houdini and I'm not like running the stick all over the place trying to find where this guy is because I know he's gonna start throwing fire. I've been replaying Bioshock 1 recently, and I've always remembered I'm gonna get to Arcadia and there's gonna be some guy who's gonna be like, "Hey kid, want some candy?" and it's gonna disappear in front of me and it's gonna come up behind me.
Mm-hmm.
Never fails. This guy says, "Hey kid, want some candy?" and I'm like, "Sure, where are you going, man?" So when you play Burial at Sea and the waiter is a Houdini and you're like, you know what? This city was for a time as utopian as a place can be, these plasmids were not damaging the people. They had pragmatic use. People were living the lives they wanted. Regardless of what they didn't read in their contracts, and how their life will, what we know will turn out. They were living a dream, and it looks fantastic.
Yeah.
And so when you get to the part of episode 1 where you have to leave that, it's really, you're never going back to that scene again.
Mm-hmm. I, deep down inside, for years, I wanted a game that was like Sims for Rapture, where I could just go to Rapture, make my little person, and like walk around and like talk to people and like just explore the whole entire city of Rapture.
I talked to everyone. In episode 1.
Yeah. Oh, I did too. I spent way more time. I think there was a point where I was just standing there and just in awe. I'm like, I don't want to leave.
But see, the interesting part about the Sims game is that point at which the Civil War starts and your character has to figure out what to do.
But see, it would just be a forever actual utopia, and there would be no Civil War. You would just be forever living in that era right before the Civil War.
So fun fact, if you never did it, the multiplayer for Bioshock 2 actually takes place during the Civil War.
Yep.
So when you're first making your profile for the multiplayer, it's as if you're at the restaurant right before all the shooting breaks out, and you're hearing Andrew Ryan over the TV, and then you have the Please Stand By come up, and then you're actually a participant. So the entire multiplayer is as if you are participating in the conflict on New Year's Eve, which I think is actually a neat way to sort of tie in everything of Bioshock 1 and 2 and all the story that we know of but didn't get to play.
So it looks like we covered a lot of the stuff. Do you Blue or Demi, do you have anything else that we want to add to our Bioshock discussion?
Parts
you've liked?
The only thing I remember, the only important thing I remember about Bioshock 2 is that Morla did have voice acting in it.
Oh my lord.
That's all I got. The reason I bring that up is because you were talking about the multiplayer, and I think that if I remember, she was one of the female characters. So,
well, the multiplayer wasn't. It probably wasn't bad when it was in its heyday.
Yeah, but now.
but when I went into it, it still wasn't so bad.
It was actually a lot of fun during its heyday. I played it for a bit. My boyfriend played it quite a bit more than I did because I wasn't a very multiplayer person. But it was pretty fun at the time when people were actually playing on a consistent basis. It was pretty fast paced. And it really almost cool to see different areas.
It almost made you think that Big Daddies weren't as overpowered as they seem in the story, because I think only one person ever gets to be a Big Daddy or it's like one person per team ends up being a Big Daddy at several points throughout the game. Yeah. And they're not so difficult. I mean, the applications of plasmids even change. So you could have like shock traps that are left behind, which I think is great. And it's one of those things where you actually kind of wanted those things to be in the story, or be in the story of the game, because it might not have had Bioshock 2 seem like a carbon copy. If you just have the same things over and over again, if there was even a little change to the mechanics, that would have made it seem different. But it wasn't bad. I enjoyed it.
It was fun. You have to also choose what type of character you could be. So you could be actually one of the people that were with Andrew Ryan and against the revolution of the working class, you could be with Fontaine, and you could be like, no, we're against this. You're going down. So I just think I remember there was like, you could choose a guy that was like really overweight and had like gold rings on, and then like one of the girls had like a fur coat on and stuff, and
And I believe all the characters are named too, and I think maybe one or two of them might have even shown up in the lore at some point from the video record or the audio recordings or something like that.
Oh, that's cool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I think if Mel is done with her costume analysis and fabric theories.
Kind of. I wanted to touch just briefly on the Big Sister because I feel like the Big Sister's design is really interesting. The Big Sisters within the lore are little sisters that have gone through puberty, but the atom and the plasmids and stuff like that has really messed them up. And they kind of serve a similar function to the Big Daddy in the sense of that they're there to protect the little sisters, and they're very terrifying, and they have
heart attacks.
They do, and they move fast. Let me tell you how fast they move.
This is okay. So you know how you play Bioshock 1, you hear a whale noise. You know at some point in that level you're going to see a Big Daddy. That's fine. It's not a problem. When you play Bioshock 2, once you've either saved or harvested enough little sisters, it's like the precursor to Omnigal's Scream that just appears throughout the entire, and you know you're going to get assaulted. Now, the cool thing about the Big Daddy gameplay in Bioshock 2 is that you have a couple traps as your weapons. So I just start setting up tripwires all around me, and I just wait in the corner until they come to me. Because there's no way you're going to survive a one-on-one comp. You fight Big Daddies as a Big Daddy.
Quarter in a fetal position, just rocking.
No, but you gotta remember, I'm wearing my full alpha suit, and I'm in the corner, and there's actually like no tears, so the little light bulbs just keep changing different colors. They keep going from like a really deep navy to like a really sad sky blue. So I know I'm about to be assaulted, and there's no way to get out of it. No. It's like when you play Burial at Sea Part 2, you know that the entire, just a small tangent, the entire gameplay for Burial at Sea Part 2 is all based on stealth, and it is fantastic. Everything Elizabeth gets to use, the crossbow, I believe the bullets in her pistol and all that stuff, they're all stealth based. You have knockout gas, you have stun bolts, all these different things. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. But in that game, there's absolutely no way to fight a Big Daddy because the moment it even becomes aware of your presence, it kills you and you have no way of combating. That's kind of how it felt when I was playing Bioshock 2 against the Big Sister, especially once you get to like the last couple levels where there's like two of them at the same time. It's terrible.
Yes.
There's always like that boss or that encounter that really never makes you want to play a game again. It's all the Big Sisters.
Maybe that's why I rage quit that game. You're like, I'm done. I'm done. I actually didn't finish. I was at the very end of Bioshock 2, and I was just so, you know what? I'm fed up with this game. I'm done. And I turned it off, and I never went back to finish playing it. So it's a miracle I actually picked up Bioshock Infinite after my Bioshock 2 experience. So, but yeah, like the little sisters, just real quick, when you look at them, they have a bunch of things that look like straitjackets on them, which obviously signifies, okay, they're crazy, which obviously they are. And then their little cages on the back, which when you look at it, because you don't really understand what they're there for, but they're there to actually transport little sisters. And they have these cute little bows on them. So it's a weird juxtaposition between this very ominous, bright, singular eye staring at you with a harpoon gun and a giant atom needle coming out of their arm. And then you have this little cage in the back with bows. So, and it's weird because besides the fact they're called Little Sister, if you look at it, you don't really fully pick up that it's supposed to be a female until there's the bows. So that bows help you kind of establish like, okay, this is supposed to be female. And then a lot of the concept art for the earlier Big Sisters, they actually had them wearing corsets, which is another type of indicator of something that is contained, that is under servitude. And a lot of the designs on the Big Sister indicates that as well, just with all the belts and buckles. And it's interesting that they have the bracers on for like when
the legs.
Kids were young. Yeah. So with like to help you walk. Yeah. So, and it's interesting that they have those on to show like that they're growing. I don't know. It's an interesting design. I like a lot of it, but those are the things that kind of stood out for me. So
yeah, just another thing, you said the bow, and you had me thinking. The little sisters themselves actually see Rapture in a completely different way.
Mm-hmm. I remember that, yeah.
Which you don't know this when you play Bioshock 1. And again, thinking about it further, in Bioshock 1, you end the game off by becoming a big daddy, which is like a hint to, hey, this is what you're going to do in Bioshock 2. But yeah, they see this world in this rosy floral colors, these reds and these bright oranges. The Big Sisters look like princesses to them. Splicers look pretty much how they were, I guess, before the disaster that took place in Rapture. They all look like proper gentlemen, proper ladies. Big Daddies look like knights. I mean, it's really amazing
Which one's the angels? Is that the dead splicers?
They're the dead bodies, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's something said at the very beginning of the first game.
Oh God, that's so creepy.
When you run into I think you're like knocked off a railing or something, and you land on the bottom, and a little sister walks up to you with a bouncer, and she's like, "Look, there's an angel," and then she's like, "Oh, he's not an angel yet. One day,
oh God,
one day he's going to be an angel," and you're like, "Please no, nope, I'd rather not." It's actually nothing that makes me want to be that. Just gotta say,
given the burial at sea with the dimensions, they could be perceiving a different dimension entirely.
Especially if you consider if she's a little sister is supposed to be Elizabeth.
Or Elizabeth clones or or splinters of Elizabeth or something like that. Yeah.
Right.
Because I think that was the other thing that I was going to say when you said that the Big Sisters originally had the corsets. Well, Elizabeth has the corset as well.
Yep.
Which was another tie-in there as well.
Oh, another thing that was actually kind of creepy at the beginning of Burial at Sea episode 1 is you see all the little girls that would turn into little sisters.
Well, because isn't Burial at Sea? Burial at Sea was looking for one of them. Wasn't Sally?
Yeah, but what you're seeing is you're seeing the process at which these little girls actually become little sisters in terms of their mentality and so on and so forth.
Oh, okay.
But if you want a really creepy scene, it's that scene in the beginning of episode 2 where you're chasing down Sally through, the streets of Paris, and she turns up behind you. Which, by the way, the jump scares in Bioshock, I'm not a person who can play these type of games where there's jump scares. I don't do well. I can watch.
So what I'm hearing
films.
is we should put a webcam up and make Demigod play this on stream.
Yeah, I can do horror films, but when you're playing a game, it's. I get that's what it's supposed to be. So the first time I played Burial at Sea episode 2, I'm chasing this little girl down Paris, and I see visually the scene starts changing. There's fog. It gets dark. I end up in a furnace room, and I turn around, and she's gone full little sister, and she's staring me in the eye like Damien, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" And it happens several times because the character of Sander Cohen loves to do that to you in Bioshock 1 and in Burial at Sea. as I was replaying it, there's a part in Bioshock 1 where you enter a dentist's office, and as you walk in, the entire place gets iced over, and when it clears out,
yeah,
you see a corpse on one of the beds. I said, don't worry about. I just keep walking. I go to a desk. I start picking things up.
No,
it gets fogged over again, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'm gonna walk over and I'm gonna see that guy's no longer on the bed anymore. I turn around and this thing is right in front of me.
don't you know that if there's a dead body, if there's a thing laying on the ground like an enemy, you always double tap that right away.
Well, no, okay. I know that happens later on in the game, because later on in the there's always like these fake corpses that when you walk by them, they get up. Not the same thing. No, he literally just appeared out of the Lutesis ripped him from one reality to the next, because it happens in Burial at Sea Part 1, I think, or something like that, where you look into one of the video screens and you see that Sander Cohen purposely messed with it. And then at the end of it, there's like a little sign on the video screen that says turn around. I should not have turned around. That was the worst experience of my life.
So basically they're weeping angels. You blinked.
I would rather they be weeping angels. I'd rather a lot of things from Doctor Who be there instead of Sander Cohen and his freaking trickery. This is not fun. Give me Mummy on the Orient Express. Don't give me that.
Oh, nice.
Well, very cool. So do we want to wrap up?
Yeah, let's go to shout outs real fast. Demigod, you wanna lead us?
Sure. So just first I just want to give a shout out to my raid group. Damo, Laura, Josh, Justin, Bryce, you guys are hilarious. And also, this might be a shameless plug, but not really. I contribute weekly haikus to a podcast focused on J.R.R. Tolkien called the Token Road Podcast. So if you guys want to listen to that, the hosts are very friendly, very nice. They give very layman's reviews of chapters from The Lord of the Rings and other works by Tolkien. So if you guys want to listen to that podcast, you guys want to hear my haikus, because I don't know why I started doing haikus for them, but they were like, hey, you want to have your haikus on the air? Sure, why not? And I did get interviewed by them once. They're very nice people. So if you guys want to listen to that, there's any Tolkien enthusiasts amongst you guys, then please check them out.
That's awesome. And you get anything else, or that it?
Nope, that's about it.
Perfect. Well, for me, I just wanted to give a big shout out and a big congratulations to Morla. She was allowed to let everyone know that she has a part in a new game called The House of the Dying Sun. She's actually, if I remember this correctly, she's the female pilot voice part of it, and it looks really cool. So you guys should definitely check that out. It's kind of an indie game. I think it's an indie developer out of Seattle who actually used to be at Bungie, if I'm remembering that correctly. But the guy has been working on this game for a pretty long time. It's indie developer Marauder Games. So check that out. House of the Dying Sun looks really, really cool. It's kind of like a space flight ish thing. It's an indie game. There's not really an easy way to describe it that I've come up with just yet. So, but that's my big shout out for this one. And then of course, thank you so much, Demi, for jumping on, and also, just for all the I call him our resident expert, because he pretty much led the chat this month. That's the thing about the Extra Lord games is, some of us, especially me, I have games that I'm very knowledgeable on, and then if they don't fall within that purview, I might be able to do decent on them. Like, I can summarize them fine, but I don't really know. I don't know enough to lead chat. So, like, Bioshock was definitely one of those. And so I really appreciate people when really just am thankful that people step up like you did. And again, next month's chat is going to be over Borderlands. If you have any interest in that entire series, which is a crazy series.
Yes. I'm very excited.
Tiny Tina can burn.
You might get in trouble with one of your raid mates.
I've teased Damel so much every raid night, so
we tease
I'm
Damel
surprised I'm not off yet.
But if you guys have any interest in Borderlands, in the story, which is again just a crazy funny fun story, but also really detailed. Feel free to jump in the Discord. It's in the we have an entire extra lore channel built out for that. I've noticed that people are very excited about that, and I'm hoping that we have a good conversation next month as well. So that's my shout outs, and I'm going to hand it over to Justin.
Yeah. Just wanted to thank Demi for coming on and completely schooling me in Bioshock. I think I will probably pick up the collection and see what it's all about if I can get some time. But and a big shout out to my crew that I run with, DoD Chatter White crew, and just to Blue and Mel for just keeping the ship afloat while I'm working 148 hours a week. So, way to go, guys.
And then Mel, what do you got for us?
I really don't have much this week. Just a big shout out. Thank you for joining us. Because my remembrance of Bioshock, it wasn't as great. But thank you for joining us to help with that. And and then just also again, Blue. I always want to give shout outs to Blue because he does an amazing job keeping stuff running smoothly. Despite Justin and I sitting here trying
smoothly.
This is like, this episode has been the pre-show for this episode. Oh God, they
I'm
really
surprised you survived.
I'm surprised. I was getting yelled at by chat that I needed to breathe because I was laughing so hard. So definitely, if you guys get a chance, and the outro, we'll talk about it too, but definitely show up for one of the live streams if you can, because all that gets obviously edited out just for the podcast on Podbean and iTunes and all that. So for the shenanigans, both pre and post show, check out the Twitch account is what I'm gonna say with that one. And I guess if that's all you guys got, we good?
Yeah.
Nope.
All right. Well,
thank you again.
Yeah, definitely. Well, with that, we'll begin to wrap the chat up. Thank you again to those over on Twitch for coming to spend the evening with us. If you'd like to join us, please be sure to give us a follow over on twitch.tv/FocusFireChat. Links to all our sites can also be found with our episode archives over on www.focusfirechat.com. Thank you again, Demigod, for jumping into the chat. We really appreciate having you as a part of the chat, and like I said, we're going to need to get you back on sometime soon. Please be sure to email us at focusfirechat@gmail.com with any feedback or questions concerning the podcast, and let us know how we're doing by giving us some feedback on iTunes or through that email as well. We do try to stream a recap of the month-long Extra Lore conversations in the first week of each month, but if we have any variations, we always make sure to let everyone know through our Twitter account at FocusFireChat. Also, be sure to check out our partner podcast within the Guardian Radio Network over on theguardiansofdestiny.com. So, until next time, focus your fire and may your light shine bright.